Good morning, church. This week definitely flew by for me. I don't know about you, maybe it was the opposite. But regardless of the tempo of our week, I pray that this past week and as we wrap up the week, that you would continue to include God into your plans, into your schedules, and into every moment of your life. With that, let's begin. Now, I'm sure when you were looking at the title of today's devotion, you were probably wondering, what is a one-word sentence? Any guesses of what that might be? Now, it's actually the hardest sentence for me to say, and I definitely struggle with saying this a lot. But basically, it's no, N-O. Did you know that no is actually a sentence? You see, the word no forms a complete thought, which means it's a complete sentence. For me personally, it's the most difficult sentence for me to say, especially for someone that likes to say another really short one-word sentence that is made of 3 letters, which is yes all the time. Now, one of the negative side effects of me not being able to say no is that I always find myself with too much to do on my plate. You see, my plate is quite full already, but then I simply add to it more and more and more, which results in not being able to rest, or maybe not enough time to take care of myself or spend time with Mango, my cat, or no time to eat, or really just to do anything. And a lot of the times what happens is it leaves me quite burnt out or feeling hopeless, and it's really not good. Now, a lot of the times this can be avoided when we learn how to set our boundaries for ourselves. And that's why many people say that learning to say no helps you set those boundaries and those limits. Now, of course, there are many other factors and other things that involve, setting your own boundaries, but one of the most practical advice given is how to say this one word sentence. And we have to remind ourselves that, it's okay to say no. No is a complete sentence. Now, it doesn't always mean we should say no, right? Saying yes is, like I said, another one word complete sentence, and it's just as equally important. But it's key to understand the right time for us to say both yes and both no. So finding balance is really the key, because when we find ourselves saying yes to everything, one thing will lead to the next, and then to the next, and then it really becomes this vicious, never-ending cycle that ultimately has us saying yes to everything, and that becomes really a problem. For example, there was a time a few years back, actually more than a few years now, where somebody asked me to help them proofread an essay for some kind of college admission that they were trying to get into. And without much thought, I just said yes, even though I was in the middle of preparing for finals and, I had a lot on my plate as well. But what happened from there on, it turned into this, can you help me rewrite this one part? I think you can help me write it better. And then eventually it came to, can you just write this paper for me? And I just kept saying yes until I realized, I can't do this. So long story short, I eventually did say no. But by then, it was so hard because by saying no, I felt like I was rejecting him, or that maybe he was gonna hate me, and then I didn't really want to be rejected by him. But by saying no, in the end, I was able to keep my boundaries and set these limits, and it helped me find this healthier balance in my life. So it's really important, as you can see, why we have to learn how to use this one-word sentence. Today, we continue looking at the book of Titus, and now we're looking at the 2nd chapter. And remember, Paul is writing to Titus, who's on the island of Crete, which has a really bad reputation for their obsession with Greek mythology and also for being liars and these evil beasts. Now, Paul's greatest concern is that Christians living here have become more like these Greek gods rather than the God of this universe. So he writes in urgency and with much concern to Titus on finding people or telling people to live a life that reflects the knowledge they have of God. So chapter 2, Paul continues from this ideal where we left off yesterday. And he wants them to live a life that makes sense, right? Where the numbers do add up, that their knowledge reflects in their actions. And he paints this picture of how Christian men, women, young people, and even slaves should behave. Then we find Paul transitioning into the transformative power of the gospel message and what the gospel, or what the grace of God, can do for us. Look at Titus chapter 2, verse 11 to 12. It says, "For the grace of God has appeared that offers salvation to all people. It teaches us to say no to ungodliness and worldly passions, and to live self-controlled, upright, and godly lives in this present age." You see, verse 11 really summarizes what the gospel message is all about. It's a message of his grace for all people, and that includes male and female, rich and poor, worthy or unworthy, slave or free. Salvation through the life of Jesus Christ is meant for all. And then Paul says that this very gospel message, this grace of God, does two things. It teaches us two things, right? Basically, it teaches us how to say no, but it also teaches us how to say yes, or to live. So what are we saying no and yes to? Well, we say no to ungodliness and worldly passions, and then we say yes to living a life being self-controlled, being upright and godly. In other words, living a Christian lifestyle, not just saying we believe in God, but living that out. Now, all of this is a result of understanding and taking hold of the gospel message. That's what it teaches us, and that's why it's so transformative and so powerful. And so we as Christians, it becomes so much more important that we grasp and hold close the power of the gospel message, because that's what compels us to be able to say yes to God and no to the things of this world in our walk. You see, this isn't a call for us to become perfect, and this doesn't say that we will become perfect. Of course, we're human, we make mistakes. Paul understands that quite well, and we will make mistakes saying yes and no to the wrong things. But that's why it's so important that Paul starts this by saying, look to the gospel, right? It's the gospel message. That's what it teaches us. It's us going back to Jesus all the time. And that's why we need Jesus every single day. It's not just a weekend thing. It's not something that you experience only at church, but we need Jesus every moment of our lives. So church, remember this. Let's learn to say no to the world and yes to Jesus, and remind ourselves daily of the transforming gospel message.